Okay, I wanted to also talk about some special cases with absolute value because every once in a while it does come up, and I want to make sure you're prepared for it. So I wanted to give you an example of a special case in absolute value where they ask you to find the solution or to solve the absolute value of x plus 7 is equal to a negative 3. Now, if you keep in mind what kind of answers come out of an absolute value, this question isn't really too bad. If you forget and you start solving for it, then you're going to find out that something's up. So I'm going to assume that you didn't catch on what's so wrong with this, but we're going to solve this thing and show you what happens. So let's say I take x plus 7 equals negative 3, and then over here I write x plus 7 is equal to 3. Now, already hopefully some alarm or something is going off saying something is up, because I'm used to writing the negative on this second equation, not on the first one. But if you didn't catch it, that's okay, but we're gonna see what happens if you actually follow through and you do every single step the exact same way you were supposed to do it. Alright, so I get negative 10, subtract 7, x is equal to a negative 4. Now, here's where the problem lies. You say, okay, this is the answer. These are the answers I get, and you go on to the next problem. But remember, you're supposed to follow the same. When you solve an equation, you're supposed to check to make sure that your solutions that you get to an equation solve it and make it true. Alright, so I'm going to put that negative 10 in here. And if I put a negative 10 plus 7 in here, and I'm going to just do it down here just to show you. If I take negative 10 and put it in for x, negative 10 plus 7 is negative 3. What happens when you take the absolute value of negative 3? You're going to get 3, which is not equal to negative 3. So that's where there's going to be an issue. Also, let's go over here just to prove to you that this is equally in bad shape. I put this in, I get the absolute value of 3, and I write down, oops, 3 as well. Neither one of these answers is going to give me that negative 3. Okay, so the idea behind this is hopefully that once you get pretty good at these, you look before you leap. Meaning, look at these problems and say, hey, why is this true? Can I do this? And the key is here. Let me grab the highlighter here. Remember that you're supposed to get a 0 or a positive number out of this side. So in theory, you're supposed to there's no way to get a negative. Alright, so there's no way to get, because this is going to either give you 0 or some sort of positive when you leave, not what you're putting in, but what you're getting out. So once you put in something in for x, if you take the absolute value and it doesn't come out to be negative 3, which is never going to, you're never going to have a solution. So every time you leave one of these absolute values, you're going to get a 0 or a positive number. It's impossible to get, because remember, absolute value has to do with distance away from 0. So when you go to do this stuff, if you get there's no way to generate it. So there's no way to generate a negative. So with this type of problem, you're going to write down no solution. And in my class, you can say no solution without any work, but then you have to say to me why, so I can fully see if you fully comprehend why you're writing that. Because I know there are some students out there that would write no solution just for the sake of, I don't know how to do it, so I'm just going to write no solution. I am perfectly happy with you writing no solution as long as you can say why, and you can even say something like it's no solution because an absolute value can never equal a negative, which is what it's asking me to do. So that's a case for that one. Let me show you an absolute value question. They might have, absolute value inequality question. So let's say, again, we're going to keep the math simple because it's the concept I'm looking at, not the complexity. So let's say I have something like this, and then I write down less than or equal to negative 2. Alright, so I've had the same problem as I had with the equations. When I go to look at this, I go, well, what kind of answer should I get here? Here I should get 0 or a positive every time I do absolute value. Well, this is saying when are we going to get something that's less than or equal to -2? Well, since this can only be 0 or positive coming out, and really technically I should have the arrow kind of, just to remind you, the arrow should be pointing out, because you can put positives, you can put negatives, you can put 0 in, but what comes out is the important part. You leave, when you test these things, these are the last guys you use over here. These are the last ones you use, so when you test your answer. And so this is always going to generate a positive answer. So, or 0. It's never going to generate a negative. Now be careful, because sometimes, so this is again is a no solution answer. But you have to be careful, because you don't want to automatically say, oh, I see a negative over here, so I'm automatically going to assume no solution. Because let's say I gave you a problem that said this. Alright, I'm just writing anything, just some random things in here. What if I put this instead? Okay, remember, this is going to come out to be a 0 or a positive. Alright? So 0 or a positive number is going to come out. And again, I'm going to draw the arrow going out, because that's what happens. In can be a 0, a positive, a negative coming in for x. But coming out, it's always going to be a 0 or positive. Well, when is the 0 or positive greater than or equal to -2? Well, that would be all the time. So for this type of answer, you're going to put all real numbers. Alright, so you need to be careful how that inequality symbol is being treated. Alright, so sometimes you'll have one, like this one, where it definitely is not going to be true, but this one over here, it's always true. So you kind of have to be careful, because you don't automatically assume, oh, I see a negative, so the answer is no solution. Because you can get an instance where it's all real numbers, which means you have lots of answers. You have so many answers, basically any number you put in here is going to, like I said, it's going to generate a 0 or a positive. So this is always going to be true. So you just kind of have to pay attention to what's going on in terms of these inequality symbols. But what I'm hoping is that when you practice this enough times, that it will become kind of practice to look at the inequalities, or look at the equations, or look at these things before you just follow the steps, because sometimes they just don't take very much time at all. Like these two problems would take no time at all. If not, you can sit there and you can do all the steps and whatever, and then if you forget to check, you're going to say these are the solutions when it's not necessarily true. So make sure that you look before you leap. That's all I'm asking you to do. All right, I think this is good for now.